Welcome to the fourth and final DF Virtual Azure Snack. In a series of 4 episodes, we make you rethink your current hosting setup. Today's show is live on Microsoft Learn TV, Microsoft Twitch, as well as the virtual.duke.nl website. Before I introduce myself, I want to point out that we do have a code of conduct and that you can find the link to that in the chat and also at the same website, virtual.duke.nl. This series is made accessible with the help from both Microsoft and Umbraco and their commitment to accessibility. So thank you both very much for that. I want also to bring to your attention that we run a Microsoft Azure challenge where you can win nice prizes. The challenge covers everything that we do in these 4 episodes. So join in, as again, the link will be on virtual.duke.nl and also in the chat. And you can win a gift bag, including a Microsoft Azure Badger. And I heard that they are quite likable, so you want to win those. We will pick a winner sometime soon after this 4th episode, so better get started. Then welcome again at this event by the Dutch Umbraco User Group. I'm Arnold Visser, one of the directors of the Dutch Umbraco User Group Foundation. We organize meetups and events for subjects related to Umbraco and the Umbraco CMS. So normally in person, but of course, due to the pandemic, we have been doing these online and we moved to English to attract a bigger audience. So right after the session, we opened the Azure Snacks Cafe on Microsoft Teams. This is a non-recorded meeting where we can discuss this meeting and you can ask questions to us, to the speaker, and to everyone who is there. In this 4th episode, we will be diving into Azure, running containers on Microsoft Azure with Microsoft Cloud Advocate Sandra Ahlgrimm. And now it's my time to introduce Emma Burstow, Cloud Developer Advocate at Umbraco HQ, who will be the host again for this final episode. Welcome, Emma.
Hello, Arnold. Thanks for having me. Good to be here today.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Exciting Umbraco news today with the launch of the beta for .NET Core. So I'm really psyched about this session because it'll be something that we can put the two together. So it's going to be great. Well,
yeah, looking forward
thanks,
to that
Arnold,
as well.
for the introduction. And I will welcome Sandra along and say goodbye to Arnold. Hey, Sandra.
Hey,
Hi, it's nice to see you again. Oh, it's a pleasure. So you're going to be here today to talk to us about containers. And I've been looking you up today and it says that you're a self-described container fan. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you can say me so or call me so.
I like that. And you're a cloud advocate for Microsoft. You've been doing it 3.5 years and a software engineer since 2013, I believe. So going a ways back.
Yeah, but more than 10 years now.
Oh, okay. So more than 10 years. So not 2013. So it's wonderful to have you today, Sandra. And I'm going to pass over to you. You can tell us a little bit about what you're here to talk about today. And then towards the end, we'll stop and I'll give you any questions that the audience has asked and we can have a little chat just at the end.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Can you already
Lovely.
see my
Right.
screen? Oh, great. So today we're going to talk about containers for your Umbraco application. I'm so happy that I'm with you here, Emma, because actually I'm a Umbraco newbie, so I really can't answer any advanced questions about Umbraco, but yes, I'm a huge container fan. So I'm working with containers since like the beginning. I was very lucky that at the company I was working at this time that we were like one of those early adapters. So already 2013, when it was just announced, we were like very curious what that is and if that would save or change our processes to the better, because we had like lots of issues where I will come to in a second. And I'm working on Java on Azure now in the Cloud Advocates team, but you can't steal the containers from me. So I'm very happy to be here. So today we're going to talk about containers for the Umbraco applications. For this, I will start with the set live before containers first to set the stage, to explain why it is interesting for you maybe, and also why I'm that huge fan. And then we're going to talk about which containers and again a bit of why containers, We're going to talk about Dockerfiles by itself, how to use it. Also, we will Dockerize an Umbraco application or even run Umbraco in a container. We'll talk a bit about best practices here because, when we do something, we want to do it right. And then I will talk a bit about how to deploy it then, like in the cloud, and we'll do one example, one very easy example here. And I give you a bit of hands-on for, deeper learning afterwards. And yeah, I'm very happy that we do have so much time for Q&A. Then probably something will be recorded and then we're going to move forward to the unrecorded ones. So without containers, we had more hassle with IDE configurations. I'm not very familiar with Umbraco, but for Java and Python, it was always if I had another application using a lower version, I had to reconfigure. So especially during the time when I was more junior, it really stole me so much time and I had to ask for help to redo the configuration that I can, I wasn't able to just run the other program on my machine, which is a bit of a hassle, which shouldn't be the case nowadays. There was also more fear involved. So specifically when we had a new release, it was okay, we're going to do this new release on Monday, 7 a.m. And I was why Monday, 7 a.m.? And they were first of all, we don't do any releases on Fridays because you never know what's going to happen on our production side. And then we also start very early to avoid that we have to sit during the whole night and doing all those bug fixings and so on. And I was yeah, but we have tested in advance. And they're yeah, Sandra, you're very junior, so you can't know that, but there's always something to happen in production. We can't test everything. So there is another environment. So we need to make sure that it's going to work out. So I really felt that there was fear involved. Also more effort, considering all the things before deployment, you had to schedule the meeting, make sure that everything was, in place. Everyone was available at this early time frame. And then, and then we had an issue and every developer, usually we gave our program to be deployed on production towards the IT team, so the administrators who would take care of it. And then there was a bug, so they come to us developers and we're what's going on here? It's not working any longer. And we're yeah, we tested it. It works on my machine. So hands up for everyone who told that already to the administrators. So, and then at some point you switch to microservices and then you have this issue that multiple services can be very hard to maintain. So, and then people leave or switch jobs, positions, and then I saw that also very often when I was then in consultancy, that companies weren't even aware how many services they have actually running and or not running, and which services are actually used in bigger environments. So, and on is so much less fun than having containers, which can abstract a lot of things away from us, also in addition with orchestrators. So what can we do to save or to solve this issue? And then containers were introduced, and it's actually not a very new concept. So it kind of started in 1979 when Unix V7 was involved. I won't talk too much in detail here because it would steal us too much time, but just be aware that the CH root system call was introduced there, and that was kind of the first step for this process isolation we needed here. Then we had several tryings, so to say, and also important steps for us towards containerization as we use it right now. Where, you can see them here. Orca Solaris containers, haven't heard about them any longer. Process containers, LXC, which is still in use, and which also introduced the term of containers, but we also still use. Then we have the Warden containers. And 2013 from Google, this let me contain that for you. I love this acronym and the name. Unfortunately, they didn't win the race. There was a race of container wars, so whose container format would win. And actually Docker made it. I mean, everyone talking about container is talking about Docker nowadays. So introduced 2013. They really made the race. So if you have to bet on a container solution, please go with Docker and save your time here. If you want to learn more, I also added some resources here to catch up. And maybe you heard in the news that Kubernetes isn't betting on Docker any longer. So should I consider using it? No worries. Here's the blog post or the announcement about that. So don't panic here. So it's not as dramatic as it sounds, even though Kubernetes won't use the whole Docker engine itself. To run containers, it's still running with Docker containers. So you still, as a developer, I still do my Dockerfiles or equivalents to build my Docker images, and then my Kubernetes cluster can pull them from the registry and so on. So yeah, let's use Docker. So hi, Docker. So what does it contain? So we have our application. As a developer, I wrote my application, so I want to put everything what I need together. So here I have my app, my programming language, such as Java, for instance, or .NET or frameworks. So my environment configuration as well as the app configuration. So if I have like port maps or anything like that, I would put all together and bound it into the container. The intention is that my containerized or Dockerized application, is it a Windows Server container or a Linux container, will just run on the Docker engine everywhere. So I have my custom data center, my cloud or another service provider or my local machine, and it will run everywhere exactly the same. The cool thing here about Windows servers is that it can run Linux containers as well as the traditional Windows Server containers. On Linux, you only can run Linux containers. So, I mean, putting everything together that I need to make sure that it will run as expected, I already know this concept. Haven't we used that before? Yes, probably with VMs, but they're not the same. So if we have a look, you probably already saw this picture somewhere. So we have the infrastructure as base for both of the scenarios. And then we do need an OS, basically. So we have the host OS on both sides. But then it starts to become different. So we have the hypervisor we need for our VMs. And then for each VM, we have our guest OS, then all the dependencies with the running applications on it. And for containers, I only need my container engine. And then there's the apps and all the dependencies in the containers. And as you can see, we can get rid of all the guest OSs like this. And that's where we can that's very much where we can save the most. So we save RAM, we save memory, we also save like licensing cost when I think about Windows servers. So we also save security issues, like if I have more OS, I need more OS to be patched and secured. So that's a lot of value that is created for us without having to have like all those guest OS. Be aware that if your company is working on like networking security solutions, you probably need this setup with having guest OSs, because then you want to have this network traffic to be analyzed and whatsoever. So that's something the containers are not for. So containers are like for developers who are having like applications and want to bundle them and deploy them somewhere, or like just run them everywhere. So let's see again what a container consists of and how we make sure that it's still secure. Like, I don't want my app to be accessed by another app without me knowing about this. So me as a developer, I still want to be sure that my app will run without any consequences. Like me as a Java or .NET developer, what are those JavaScript folks doing? Will they steal, like, I don't know, data or memory from my container? So how can we make sure that that won't happen? And Docker containers consist of multiple components. So we have the namespaces and the C groups. And they are both secured with CCOM, SEL Linux, and AppArmor. Those are all Linux concepts, and I will introduce them here a bit shortly. don't worry, you don't have to remember all of it. It's just, to give you an idea why it is secure to use containers in your environment and on your hosts, and nothing more. You don't need to become an expert for this. So C groups is everything a process can use. So you have like memory, CPU assets, devices, and so on. And namespaces is everything that a process can see. So you have the ID, mounted devices, or data, or the user C group, and everything that is in the C groups. And for the security modules, so you have AppArmor, which will block every write access to the system data, and it also blocks mounting by default. So nothing can be mounted without you knowing about this, without it being configured. Then you have SEL Linux, and this will enable, again, the access to the user path and multiple ones in ETC. That's what we're going to need for our, to make Docker run here. And we can even access, so the access can be configured, so we can just relabel the host, and then we can make sure that more is accessible. And nowadays, Docker has a very cool UI for this, so we can have a look at it. So it's very easy to do it nowadays. And you can also even do less access to the user path when you just relabel again. And I really like that I'm actually in charge of it, and I can still change it the way I want to be it, like on my machine. Yeah. And then we have SEA comp that filters system calls. So, and here we have the whitelist principle for allowed calls. So only the calls will be allowed which are set. And it also blocks 150 dangerous or uncommon system calls for me by default. So that really makes sure that my container is running as independent as needed without any security issues. So now that we set the stage and we are confident enough to run Docker containers, let's see how we can do that by Dockerizing an application. So usually what you do is you add a so-called Dockerfile. You can either do it like manually or you use a program for it. Even if you use a program for it or a certain other mechanism, I would still advise you to become, at least to get a bit of knowledge about what's happening here in your Dockerfile. Then you can still, review it and make some changes. So we will create our own Dockerfile by ourselves. For that, it's not too complicated. So we always start with the base image, and we address that with the form command. And you can add even a tag or a digest here in the end to really take a specific version of the base image. It's like, I want to have the Ubuntu version, this one, or a Java version, this one. Or I just use Java 8, and then I will always take the latest one for me here. And then I have like, I probably need to copy my application. So I need to run either the copy step here. There's another one which sounds very likely, which is the add command. But be aware that the add command will also unzip it. And it can also curve from URLs and then unzip it for you. So the best practice really here is only use what you need. So I would, if I just want to copy, I would just go with copy and don't use a more powerful command, what I don't need here. Then I set my workday path. So the relative path here. I can also set environment variables. It's again the same. I can either use env for environment variables or arg for arguments, which can be also processed later on. And then I can use run and commands, and there I can really use any commands almost. So if I need some apt-get, I could also add it here. And yeah, expose for ports. That's also very important. We'll use it many times. And yeah, and then I have command, which is the command the container will be run with. And there's another one which you will be very likely to see quite often as well, which is entry point. But be aware that entry point will be overwritten when you start the container and you give the arguments with the starting call. We'll do this in a minute. Don't worry if that's very confusing right now. We go through several Docker files just, to make it more familiar with you. So here we see a simple Docker file for a Java application. The Java app itself is very, very simple, so don't worry if you're not a Java expert. So we'll just create an HTTP server for me, leveraging from the Vertex framework. And then we'll just reply with hello world. And it listens to the port we specify in our Dockerfile. And the Dockerfile can be as simple as this. So from Maven, because I use Maven to build my application, I will set my work dir, copy everything, and then run Maven install, set the environment variable port that it will be replaced here, expose the port to be accessible later on, and then just start my application with java-jar, as I'm used to as a Java developer. Or another example for JavaScript. So here I have an Express JavaScript application. It's kind of the same. So I also, just for every call I receive, I would just reply with hello world and also the funny val here. And then I also set the port if it's set to 80, and if not, I would just use 80. And then I can log even listening on port 80. So here, the Dockerfile, again, it always starts with the from command. So from node, here I also specify a version, as we talked about this. Then I run a command, which is yarn config set no progress true. I set my work dir. I copy the package JSON, the yarn log, to be able to run the yarn install, copy everything again, run yarn build, set environment variables, expose my port, and the starting command here is yarn start. Another example for a very, very simple .NET application. As I already told you, I'm not the .NET expert here, so I'm very fine with using hello world. So here I have my hello world, and then I just keep the console window open for debug mode, and I stole that from docs.microsoft.com. And the Dockerfile here would look like this. So I still have my base image, which is Microsoft ASP.NET Core built with the version 2.0. I set my work dir, copy the CS project file, run .NET restore to build my application, the DLL, which I then need after the publishing, and then run the app inside the container with .NET ASP.NET.dll. I'm so looking forward to your question, and please correct me then if I said anything wrong here. So after I build I'm at this stage where I have my Docker files for my apps, I can now use Docker on my machine. For that, I already installed Docker locally. So now I can do a trick like this. So let me just open a terminal, probably enter some live demo. So just find this window here. Okay, apparently I can't find my mouse, so that's fine. So with Docker, I would just see the Docker help. Docker build path allows me to build my Docker image, will build my Docker image where I am now. So if I'm in the correct folder right now, what I would have loved, here, there we go. So let's see if that's big enough. Okay. So here's my repository. You can also find it on GitHub at Sandra Ahlgrimm. And here is my Dockerfile right away. So I can just build it again. The Docker build and then a dot, because then it will search in the folder where I am now. And here we'll find it and just build my container. Cool. That went quickly. So, and then after I build my image, I can also run it, and then the application will run in a container. So I can also pass some options here, and I also need to give the image name of the built container. And let's see, I also want to show you how pretty it is on my machine as I'm using so I just installed Docker on my machine. You can have it here. So you can totally stay in your terminal or Bash or PowerShell. I also love that the commands are everywhere the same, what we don't have usually, but yeah, here they are. So that's very, very cool, especially for me because I'm switching all the time. I do have a Windows machine. Now I'm on a Mac, and I also do have Windows servers and Linux servers. So it's very, very decent that they're everywhere the same. So here I have some containers I already ran, and I can also check my images. So here's also the Umbraco image. And if I don't pass a name, it will just create one for me. Okay. So I can easily start them as well. So the Docker one would do the exact same thing, like if I would here click on one, and then I can do the settings. So here I would probably pass I can give it a container name. Oh, here's also one in progress. So like my Umbraco demo, for instance. Then I can also specify host path and container path if I do have any volumes here. So then I can just start it here like this, or I do it again inside my terminal. So I do docker one and then maybe pass an argument like for the ports. So I know my 80 port is probably already taken from another service. So I would just use 83 because I'm very sure that should be open. 80 is inside the container. So that's also very cool if you are using microservices and you need multiple microservices to be tested with each other. So they can all be run on 80 or whatever the default is for your language. And then you can just put them outside. So on my host, so on my dev machine to another port. So the first one is the one which are on my machine, and then the other one is this one here. And now I need to say what it's called. So that's Umbraco. If I don't give it a name, it will just find a name for me. So let's see if that's working. Oh, I love live demos. So it says it's in use, so that's fine. Maybe I'm using too much here, so let me first clean up. I can also specify my dev environment here on Docker, so set the stage, and yeah, there we go. So I can also say that I want to use like more CPUs or more memory, swap earlier, so maybe I should give it a bit more, then it's faster. For file sharing, when you're on Windows, you might have to add C here if you're using any Windows-specific things. So be aware that you had this. You can also add the mounting here, and you can also enable experimental features. So, for instance, the new virtualization framework. And you can also just start your Kubernetes cluster on your machine. So there's actually no need to go with Minikube here. So if you want to try out Kubernetes, please just go with the Docker, install it locally on your machine, and then just start it on your machine here. So I probably need to redo this because I had to free my space here. Let's see if I can just redo it here, and we don't need to wait for it. So there are other comments as well. So if I want to use an official image, I can also do docker pull. And then if I don't specify a registry, I will just use the default one, which is Docker Hub. So you're probably aware of this. Docker Hub, hub.docker.com. That's the default registry, like GitHub is the default open source repository. So, and here I can also search for Umbraco, for instance, and it's probably also here. Yeah, so here I usually find all the containers I need, and I would always look for the official ones. For instance, if I would look for Windows Server Core, then I can find official ones here, and then you can see this by the official tag. And that's the one you can pull here as well. Or if you want to specify your private registry, you would just put it on top. So it would be then pull and then have the private registry / we'll have a look at this later. What will also pull your image is the docker build command. So no, the docker1 command, because it always looks if you have the image already locally, and if you don't, it will just pull it and then run it. With docker rm, you can remove the containers. With RMI, you can also remove the images. So yeah, there are different things. You have the images and the container. The image is kind of the recipe for your container, and the container is like the app running inside the container. Okay. And if the app has an issue, you usually don't go into the container and fix it. Usually what's happening is that the application will stop, the container will be thrown away, and you just pull the new image and then just start it again. So that's a different type of working than we were used to do it before. So, and you can also deploy a whole stack that's working. So talking about best practices, you should always go for small images. That will speed things up so much. So you can use that or apply that by either using the docker ignore command. So it's like git ignore. You just add everything that's not needed to be like deployed somewhere. It can be like logs or something else. Or you can use the Alpine version. And with Alpine, I mean like the slimmest version that has everything you need for your app, but nothing more. So you can check on Docker help or on your registry where's the smallest one. So usually, yeah. So usually you should be able to see also the size of the images. So here I have the tags, and then it is usually like Slim or Alpine, but you can have a look by yourself. And also if the container runs, you can see the image size as well. And you will also, you will learn it. And to use the smallest image, to get a very small image, you can also use multi-stage builds. And that's very common nowadays. So as I said, you find the smallest images on Docker Hub. There's also something called Docker Store. It's kind of the idea that you can buy some containers, which can be useful. I think it hasn't kicked off yet, so I'm not sure if anyone uses it, but yeah, maybe it will come soon. So, and here you can also see there are like Alpine versions and Slim versions for instance, for Maven here. So for multi-stage builds, what do they mean? So you have like a container stack. So there are like multiple containers on top of each other. Each container will start with a form statement. And you have, they are also perfect to have a separation of build, test, and deployment. So you have like a build container, a testing container, and a deployment one. Let's see how that looks like. Here's a Maven example, but the one for Umbraco is also a multi-stage build, so we can have a look at this one as well. So here I have my build stage where I need for it's my build tool, so I have to have it. So I just put it here. I use the Alpine version because I don't need more. There are no specific things, so I can just call this build container. And I set my work dir. I run the Maven install command, which will generate my jar file for me. And then here's the next stage, which is also the final stage, where I can just choose the smallest version possible. So here it's the OpenJDK JRE Alpine, which is like the least you need to just run a jar file. So which make my jar file run. So my Java app will run with this. So and then I set again my work dir. I just copy the jar file because that's actually all I need to make it run. I don't need Maven in my deployment container, so why have it, right? So I specify the environment variables, I expose the environment variable. I can also set an entry point, and then I specify the starting command here. And that results, so we know we had seen the other Dockerfile from the beginning where we just used Maven. And this container is actually 11% of the size which were the first one. So that's really a lot. And that also results in, less surface for security attacks. It's not that only the deployment and the scaling is faster, it's also more secure in the end. So let's see how the Dockerfile for the Umbraco application looks like. So here, I already told you I'm not a .NET developer, so sorry for this. And I also didn't have the time, or how do you say, I love experimenting. So I just can't have everything on my machine. And I love that containers are also allowing me to play around with everything without having to install everything on my machine, because that might just result in conflicts with the version errors and so on. So here I have my Dockerfile for Umbraco, so I can run Umbraco locally on my machine without having to install Umbraco. That's very cool, isn't it? So I would just use the .NET SDK for the build environment, set the work dir, install everything that's needed. So with .NET New Umbraco, you're probably more familiar with all those commands than I am. And then I set my stage for publishing, which is where I run the .NET publish command. And here we are using the very, very, very new Umbraco v9 for it. And for the runtime image, I would just use the ASP.NET environment, set my work dir, the environment variables, and then copy everything which is in the publish folder as it is needed. And my entry point here is .NET Umbraco v9 alpha DLL. So, and I hope we can live demo this. Otherwise, I might need to restart Docker. Okay, that looks good. So here's also an Umbraco container which is running. Remember, I started it 10 minutes ago, actually. It's also up for 10 minutes. So let's see if it's already available on my local host. Do you remember? Oh yeah, 8083. Oh, that's not running. So let me just try that again. Maybe this time with 84. Oh, sorry for this. Forgot to show you. So now I just opened localhost 8084, and now I can see the Umbraco. So I can go ahead, install Umbraco, enter my name. How cool is that? I haven't installed Umbraco. Trust me, I haven't done it before. I just used this Dockerfile. You can also find it on my GitHub repository. You might have a look. We can have a look later on. So when we have everything containerized, you might think, okay, how do I put them together? Or maybe I do have a database as well. Oh, even better, can I play around with databases without having to have those databases installed on my local dev machine? And yay, yes, you can. You can use docker-compose also to put them together. And it really doesn't matter which languages or which databases you're using. I think everything is available in containers nowadays. So for instance, we here have a MySQL database and a PHP application. And I can easily just bind them in my Docker-compose file. So I set the ports here. And for the PHP application, I also need to specify the volume. So that's the one where I mount into. And for the database, I also need to set the environment variables. They're like here. And here with the links one, I make sure that the PHP application can address the database, which is very, very cool. I wish I would have had this when I was studying, but it was taking so much time just to, make sure that MySQL was running on my local machine, or yeah. So I'm very, very happy about this. For the Docker Compose, there are also other commands. So with Docker Compose up, I can bring everything up. Docker Compose down, yeah, is the same like Docker stop. So Docker Compose up is like running the Docker run command for everything. Docker Compose down, the stop one. Docker Compose build will build all my Docker images, addressing the Dockerfiles in each application. With Docker Compose PS, I can look through all my containers, and Docker Compose stop will also stop all the containers again for me. Yeah, if you want to see a more colorful example, I think I also gave you a link to this shortly. Because on GitLab, I did a kind of fun project where I programmed the picking, so like the normal warehouse, and I had a lot of fun using all the languages. So as you can see here, I used like Go, Java, JavaScript, .NET, and each of the applications do have a Dockerfile, so you can check them out here, where I use like Node application for this one. And then I do put them all together with the Docker Compose file. Oh, and I felt so powerful, you know, having all those ones which were like dependent on each other. So a whole event-driven system using CQRS and everything on my machine. That was so cool because I really needed that for local development, because I was driving a lot, traveling to my horse, and it's in Brandenburg and there's no internet connection. So I really needed to have this locally on my machine as well. And it was just working. So I actually programmed almost all of this in trains, which is very, very cool. So far so good. And with Docker Compose push, you can also push everything to your registry. Speaking of the registry, what is that? So the registry actually comes also in a Docker container, so you can also run it locally on your machine if you want to. It's usually using the port 5000, and you can, if you want to, just use the docker run command and, for instance, use the registry version 2, start it on your machine. Then you pull whatever image you want to, just tag it with your registry name, like for you, it's localhost when you run it on your local host. Then you can just push it and pull it again and make whatever you want to. So and that's also how a private registry would work. Also some at vendors like the Azure registry, which gives you even more benefits like security and so on. And also the Docker Hub is kind of like this. So there's nothing special here. Everything's open source. Then you have multiple containers. So what do I do? So if I want to use Docker, do I already have to use like Docker Swarm or Kubernetes? So Docker Swarm is like the native clustering for Docker. It comes from Docker. But like the container wars, there was kind of an orchestration war. Maybe it's still going on, but actually I think almost everyone said, okay, it's Kubernetes. Like Red Hat said, okay, it's Kubernetes, betting on OpenShift, which is based on Kubernetes. From Google, it is Kubernetes, so they're betting on it. Amazon bets on it. Microsoft bets on it. So Kubernetes is the orchestration for containers. Well, with Umbraco, I think I do have a single page web application. Isn't it a bit of overkill to like having a whole container orchestrator to maintain and to run and to secure and to update and everything? Yes, it probably is. So you can also use something like Azure App Service, which is also able to just pull your container image and then just run it on your machine. And that's what I want to show you right now. So here I just go on the portal, and I also created a video for it to make sure that we stay in time. I uploaded it to YouTube, so actually everyone can have a look here. So I'm on my Azure portal. I will just create a new app service. So it took me 10 minutes, and now the shorter version is 6 minutes, so it won't take too long. And Now I create a new resource group for it because I always prefer, if I try something out and test and experiment, I always create a new resource group because then I can delete it afterwards easily. I specify a name. So for me, I want to use Umbraco starter, because I'm starting with Umbraco. I would choose the container, Docker container for publishing. I choose the region, so maybe Germany West Central, as you can hear from my accent, I'm German, or I'll just go with West Europe. I can choose a Linux plan, which is fine. It's going to be creating a new one for me here. So now it wants me to specify what I'm using. So by default, it would just, I think it would just start with an Nginx container, or here you can see this one. But I want to use my container, right? I want to deploy the Umbraco container on Azure. So here I only have the sample Nginx, so I need to have an Azure Container Registry. Oops, let's create one. There isn't one already. So I will specify again the resource group to have them bound. And then I give a registry name, which is maybe Sagrima. Okay, minus is not allowed, so I just delete it again. Specify the location. It can be also in another location, but for simplicity, I will keep it here as well. Specify the SKU and create it for me. Maybe the basic one was a bit too much overkill for this demo. You could also have used the free one here. So, and now I create my registry. I don't allow public network access, or I do allow it, but I will secure it as well. So now my registry got deployed, and now I need to check my access keys, because if I want to push now my locally created Docker image towards the Azure Container Registry, I need to log in first. And that's what I do with the docker login command. So here I have my Docker file, so I can log in here. And now it wants my username password. So I have to specify an admin user here. That's obviously only needed if you do the local testing like I'm doing here. So I then copy the username and the password. No worries, the passwords are both regenerated already. So no need to try something funny here. So, and then if I want to push it to my registry, I first need to tag it. You can also find it on the registry and go on Quick Start. It will actually guide you through this with the steps I'm following here. So I'm tagging my Docker image with Umbraco tag, and then with Docker tag Umbraco. So that's the container, how it is called on my machine, and then how it is with the container registry in front, and then I push it. And here you can also see the size. So I'm having a lot of layers, and also they're not very small. So you might want to investigate a bit in the size here later on. So yeah, here again, we see we tagged it, and it always needs to be tagged with the container registry name up front. If it's not port ID, you need to specify it here, and then the container name. And for a real life scenario, you would obviously use CI/CD, and then you make sure that the services are bound there, and there's then no need to use this admin user here. So, and then I can see in my container registry the container image here, and that's what it is. So you can see it, it's the manifest, it's kind of a recipe. So go back to my app service. I can now choose the image I saved in my registry, and I can also set up a startup command. And when you remember, we set up the port. So startup command is docker run. No, I don't need that here. I can just add the variables I've chosen. So which would be -p 8080. So I think I can actually remove the docker one here, because that's happening behind the scenes anyway for us. So wonderful. I think that should be everything. So, so yeah, I can enable application insights later on. So I will just create this one. Cool, now it is created, so I should be able to access it on every machine. So you're at home, you should be also able to access it. And as you can see, we already have the deployment in preview, so it is also very easy to add the continuous deployment. We'll do that in a bit. So here I can see my running app in my app service, and I have everything. I can also put manage access and so on. And here I have the Umbraco app running again, but this time it's not on my local host, but it is on Azure App Service. So you can see that by the azurewebsites.net. So go ahead, umbraco-data.azurewebsites.net. It's also available on your machine as it is in the internet. If I want to have the CI/CD in place very easily, I can just go on deployment, check deployment center, and then here I can just turn on the continuous deployment. And here I have like multiple things I can do. I mean, I'm on GitHub, so I could even just add GitHub actions here. Or I just say, okay, I want to push it with another process or manually to my container registry. So now I have it like whenever something gets updated on my container registry, it will pull the new image and then start it for me. Remember, we are throwing away the existing container and run a new one. So you do have an outage. It's a shortly outage, but there is one. Okay. So the deployment is through CI/CD pipelines. It can be Kubernetes or app service or whatever. So usually what you do on your dev environment, you code, you run, you debug. You can even debug in containers. It's available for every IDE as well. And then you build, push the image to the container, and then the continuous deployment pipeline will pull the image from the container and then run it somewhere. Is it app service, Kubernetes, whatsoever? Okay. And yeah, just a little hint. You can have databases in containers, but as you remember, containers are by default stateless. So you probably don't want to have this. Like if there's an issue, the data got thrown away and you can just build a new container. That's not what you want to have for databases. So please use a common data service for this, database service for this, and just bind it to your application. Great. For hands-on, you can get free resources on Azure at aka.ms/az-free. You can learn more about Docker on this Learn module we created on aka.ms/az-learn-docker. There's also something, a Learn module for the deployment on app service. And now I think it's time for questions.
Thank you so much, Sandra. That was fantastic. Really, really interesting. I couldn't believe how quickly you managed to install Umbraco into a container. It was 10 minutes in the background.
Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, it was probably 15 minutes because I need to, find the corresponding port. But yeah, as a newbie, it was very, very fast.
Wonderful. I loved how agnostic the whole thing seems. So it seems, you showed us the Docker files in Java, Docker files in JavaScript. It was, it really is truly agnostic, right? Any technology?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the idea is that, you can put everything in a container and it will just run. And as a developer, I should also be the one who creates the Docker file because I know best what my application needs, right? So what are the dependencies, what environment variables do I have, and so on. And then the IT ops team or the administrators can take on with the Docker images then.
It's wonderful. I actually have never even seen the inside of a Docker file until today. So thank you so much. It was less intimidating than I thought it would be too, I must say. We will pop over to the cafe for some Q&As, but just before we do, there's just a couple of small questions. Is it okay if I put them to you now?
Yeah, sure. Please do so.
Fab. So when would you use a container and not a VM? Like when's the best time to not consider a VM and go straight to a container?
Yeah, I hope I made this also clear. So if I don't have any, so if my product doesn't need multiple VMs to show like network or something, then, and if my product is an application, please use containers. If you have an UI, containers might be not the ideal idea here because like an UI outside of browsers. I mean, so if I'm like doing a Windows application and UWP app, something like this, then it's probably not the right idea. But for everything else, everything console based, everything on browsers, web applications, yeah, please go ahead with containers.
Fantastic. And then the other question was around the Kubernetes depreciating Docker. What does this mean in real terms? Does it change anything?
It speeds things up. So if you have a look what the Docker engine consists of, it's like multiple components. There's like one C where the containers are running in. And then there are additional features like also like the UI, which I used here on my machine. And I don't need that on the servers where the production systems are running on. So there only I need, the only thing I need is one C. So I think that's the one they chosen, or Containerd. Yeah, no worries. So they really use now the subset of the Docker engine they need to run the containers and nothing more. So no overhead here on this side as well. So it's changing something for Kubernetes, but not really for the developers. We're still relying on the Docker files. We're still using Docker. We still love the concept. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, just before I pass you over, I'll also say thank you for showing us how to run without using an orchestration service too. I didn't realize that that was in any way possible. So I'll head back to Arnold. And Arnold, if you can just say goodbye and thank you so much, Sandra, and I'll see you at the cafe.
Yeah, thanks. See you soon.
All right. Yes, I'm back. Well, it was very interesting. And I think certainly with Umbraco v9 on .NET Core, it really makes sense to start thinking about containers because it will give you even more benefit than you currently can do with containers in Umbraco. It was also the first time I did see Umbraco 9 running in a container and run so smoothly. So for those of you who are working with Umbraco and not have tried out Umbraco 9 yet, we released the beta today. So yeah, try it out and maybe try it out in a container now. Would be nice, I guess. Also, don't forget about the Azure Cloud Challenge we have on our website, because if you looked at all our 4 episodes now, you'll be able to answer most of the questions or all the questions, and you will be able to win stuff. So always in for that, right? Yeah. So for my final thing, I think I have to mention that we will be on the Azure Snacks Cafe after this. It's on Microsoft Teams. It's non-recorded, so please join in and ask all your questions that you're too afraid to ask while recording. We will all be there. Sandra will be there. So see you there, and hopefully see you on the next Dutch Umbraco User Group event. Not yet planned, but we'll be launching something very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.